Hi all, thanks for joining. We'll begin in about a minute and just see people still coming in. Hi everyone, and welcome to an AST virtual event. I actually think it's the first one of 2022, which, considering it's March, is probably poor form from me. So I do apologise for that. Just been a busy few months, I guess. I think the last one we did was in person at the Emirates with Per Mertesacker, but of course we had a podcast as well and a virtual element. So I'd like to welcome you all, welcome our existing members, welcome any new members that have joined in the last few months as well. We're absolutely delighted to have you, including members from overseas as well. Obviously really excited to have you. It is a tough time at the moment with all the things going on, and if anyone is linked to Ukraine, then we're sending you our love and our positive vibes and that kind of stuff, because we know how hard it is. So stick together, and hopefully tonight will just give people something different, and we can kind of just talk a little bit about the Arsenal. So we've got a really kind of interesting event planned, and we've just got the agenda on the screen. So we're going to talk Arsenal finances with Nigel in a few minutes, who's our kind of resident expert. Members will have seen newsletters being sent out with some kind of information and stuff, and Nigel's just going to talk through it. We did record a short podcast on, I think it was Tuesday, so that can be found kind of via your newsletter, but it can be found via kind of Spotify and Apple and Google and all the kind of podcast platforms if you just search the Arsenal Supporters Trust. We'll update from the advisory board and the fans forum. We'll talk about the 4% increase, the dangers of socios, the cryptocurrency stuff, stadium ticketing improvement, safe standing, and Tim's favourite subject, the government fan-led review. And then part two, we'll focus on fighting online abuse. We've got a few sort of special guests from Arsenal. We've also got someone called Jonathan from Signify, an agency working with Arsenal. And we got the chance to talk to Granit Xhaka earlier as well. So we'll kind of talk to him a little bit about online abuse and how it makes him feel and stuff like that. So we've got quite a big agenda. So I do want to kind of get moving. So if I kind of invite sort of Nigel on, I know there's a lot of numbers here, but Nigel, do you want to kind of briefly just summarize kind of what the Arsenal accounts say, and then I'll kind of come in with a few questions?
Sure. So these were the figures which were released on Monday. It's for the COVID season ending 31st of May 2021. That was a season where we only had attendances at 2 matches, 2,000 for Burnley, 10,000 for Brighton last game of the season. So you can see what that's done to match day revenue, down from 75 million to 4 million. So virtually nothing there. If you look a third of the way down, football revenue down from 343 million to 327 million, all related to match day. The broadcast looks like there's been a massive increase, 120 to 184. That's predominantly because we had some rollover. We missed some matches into May 20, which were then played in the 2021 season. And we also got to the semi-final of the Europa League against Villarreal. So a bigger payout from UEFA on that one. What else is in there? Wages, look at that, 225, 237. So, reasonably stubbornly high, one would say. Total cost near the bottom, 434 to 458. So compare the 458 to the 328. One is income, one is costs. Well, there we go. Operating loss of 130 million. How has that been funded? The cash reserves had million down to 19 million. Added the majority. Akil, if we get to the slide on highlights, please. Next one. Slide, please. There we go. We've got some highlights here. So you can see it's a record loss for the club. But as other clubs produce their figures for that season as well, we're going to see some records in there as well. One of the key issues is that Kroenke refinanced the stadium loan, which was taken out in 2006. So instead of owing some investors who had security over the ground and gate receipts and everything else, it's now a loan from KSC. It's a 2-year loan, or they have to give notice of 2 years for repayment. No notice had been given at the year end, so on that basis, it was classed as a creditor over 2 years. There were also some costs associated with that, some which were paid by the club, some which were added to the Kroenke loan. Arsenal increased their facility with Barclays. It was 50 million. It's now 70 million. As at 31st of May 2021, that was undrawn. So the whole 70 million was available, basically overdraft. I mentioned that the cash reduced 110 to 19. You've seen the wages there at 240, so that's roughly 20 million a month. Cash balances at that date there would be less than 1 month, but don't forget we're just reporting at one day in time, so nothing really to be concerned there. The Super League costs, this is something the Supporters Trust has been very, very clear on. It's mentioned in the accounts twice that any of these costs associated with Arsenal unwinding their position, coming out, giving up their shareholding in the Super League, will be charged directly to KSC UK Inc. That's the Kroenke vehicle which owns Arsenal rather than Arsenal itself, but no details or amounts were given. So that will be something we'll be watching in the coming year. I've mentioned why the broadcast has gone up. Commercials, reasonably good considering what's happening there. Redundancy costs, some were COVID related, others were not. We have assumed that the Raul Sonali payoff has been included in COVID-related redundancy costs. Whether that is fact or not, then I'll leave that for you. So there we go, Akil.
A couple of questions that I know have come in sort of in various channels and social media and stuff. And by the way, if anyone has got any questions, please do use the Q&A function, and we'll either answer them live or Nigel or whoever might answer them sort of behind the scenes. But a couple of questions. I mean, one that we always get asked is, how come the accounts are so backdated? Why are they not more recent? Why do they cover only till May?
Well, it's company law. It's a privately owned company now. All companies have 9 months from the end of their accounting period to file their accounts, and they came out on at the very, very last day, 28th of February, when there were shares in issue and they were owned by people like the trust and lots of people on this call. Then, of course, we had the annual general meeting, which was typically late September, early October. So we would have had a lot quicker visibility. So it's just one of the quirks of being a privately owned company.
Yeah, and just another question we always get asked, for simple people like me and in layman's term, I understand that KSC have refinanced the stadium debt. Does that mean they've put money in, or does that mean they'll be paid back? What does that? What happens there?
It's just a different lender. So Arsenal were borrowing from a group of investors on a long-term basis, like a mortgage, a whole variety of different investors. Those people have been repaid, and the club now owe KSC UK Inc., which is that owns 100% of Arsenal, owes them that money. That loan is just over 200 million. We have not seen the interest which is being paid. Part of the reason for refinancing the stadium was it's freed up some cash which was locked away in some reserve accounts. That was pretty much used for the Thomas Partey buyout on his contract. And secondly, the interest rates on it were 5.5% to 6%, which at the time when they were locked in 2006 would have been attractive. but clearly now you can pay a lot less for that. But because we're paying less, there were those exceptional costs for breaking the swap agreements.
Perfect. There's been a question from Graham, and it was something I know lots of people will ask. What does the wage bill probably look like now with sort of Aubameyang and Ozil not at the club anymore? Would it have changed significantly? I presume so.
Well, we had 6 reasonably high-profile players. Well, not high-profile players. Some of them weren't, but there will be some decent amounts coming onto there, and we've also had some decent amounts going off. Don't forget that when we've paid people to go, we will have paid up their wages as well, whether it be a Willian or a Mustafi or Ozil or a Aubameyang or whoever. So where is that figure at the moment? As at 31st of May 2022, so we're not quite there yet, but it will be a snapshot of where we are. I mean, it's going to be, it's not significantly lower than where we are at the moment. I know we've got a very small squad, but it's I mean, I've seen some things on Twitter where people think it's below 100 million. That's just fanciful. So no, it's still going to be in the 200 to 230 range.
Couple of questions here there's one from John, and there's one that was from, I think it might have been anonymous. The loans that they've kind of, the stadium debt refinancing, essentially another lender. Do we know interest terms? Do we know the kind of repayments? Do we know any kind of information about how that works?
Well, at the 31st of May 2021, there have been payments. There was no repayment schedule. Previously, we knew exactly how it was going to be paid off over a number of years. All we know about it at this stage is that the lender, KSE UK Inc., has to give the club 2 years' notice of needing repayment. So at the moment, it would appear to be stuck at that 200 million, or let's say it's gone up more because we know what we did during the summer of 2021. We estimate that the interest cost is somewhere between 3 to 4% per annum, but we can't say that for sure.
Cool. There's a question from our friend Chris Hudson, who we know loves questions. He DMs me most weeks with questions. Don't worry, Chris, I absolutely love it.
Let's hope it's a good one then, Chris.
Well, it's a very it's a depressing one, if I'm honest, and we've gone a little bit early to be honest. But it's do you think Arsenal will be tempted to sell a crown jewel like an Emil Smith-Rowe or a Saka because of the numbers and the losses we've made and all that kind of stuff?
No, I don't. No, I think that would just be catastrophic for a number of reasons, and completely against the process and everything that Arteta talks about. It might look attractive to sell someone for 100 million, but unless you've got another 3 or 4 of those coming through the academy, why would you? So I don't see the pressure to do that at all, Chris. Whether you can get the guy to sign the contract on what his people think he should be paid, that's a different matter. But in the days gone by, when it be a Van Persie go one time or a Nasri another or whatever, those sort of days, we're not under that type of pressure, I believe.
Well, that's reassuring and good to hear, and I'm bloody going to hold
Could be completely wrong this summer, Akil, but I really hope not.
Don't be wrong. There was something in the accounts that people might have noticed. The payment to board members seemed to double. What do you know about that?
Okay, so we've got very few board members. We've got the owner, which is Stan, and we've got his son. People think he's the owner, but he's not. It's owned by Stan. Then we've got Lord Harris, and the newest member is Tim Lewis, who's a lawyer with Clifford Chance. Tim has worked for KSE for a number of years on their corporate actions, and he has been put into the club by KSE for a number of reasons. It comes out in the accounts that Arsenal pay his employer, which is Clifford Chance, the Magic Circle law firm, for Tim's time. If he were being charged out to a normal corporate, it wouldn't be surprising to be on Glyn Taylor type of hours. So, upwards of £1,000 an hour would not be unreasonable. Well, I'm not saying it's unreasonable, not unexpected for someone of that stature at that type of firm. So a huge chunk of that doubling of those numbers, Akil, will be paid to Clifford Chance for Tim Lewis's time.
Remind me to tell Glenn Taylor, our fellow board member, to buy the drinks in next time we're out. Just finally, let's remind people what European football brings to the club. So if we're in the Champions League, how much of an impact will that have? If we're in the Europa League, how much of an impact will that have? And then I suppose the conference as well, if we have to talk about it.
So you tell me how deep we'll go in those competitions, and I'll give you a figure for each of them.
Say just group stages. Let's be sort of...
What, group stages? Group stages and you're out. Not even round of 16.
All right, let's do round of 16 then, Nigel.
Round of 16 Champions League, somewhere between 50 and 60 million. Round of Europa, I'm going to say quarterfinals in Europa, which is not too adventurous. That will be 25 to 30 million. The conference, well, we're going to pack up. We're not doing the conference.
Yeah, I hope not. And then final question. There are questions, Nigel.
Akil, if you went super deep in those competitions,
yeah,
I mean, people who are getting to the semi-finals and final of Champions League now are getting over 100 million. 120, not unreasonable to be getting if you got sort of deep into those competitions. Plus, you've got your gate receipts as well. Don't forget, for on average, Arsenal will gross somewhere around about 3 million per every home game. And if you went deep in those competitions, you've got 6 or 7 home games.
I think that explains how Spurs probably paid off Jose Mourinho's contracts for the Champions League money, and they're probably going to need to dip into it again with Conte. Nigel, there's lots of questions on the Q&A. I think the best thing would be if you kind of reply, answer them, and then all the other attendees here could kind of see them. But
Sure. Before
before you go, one final thing, I think because it's topical, 4% ticket price rise, how much would that bring in, per year for Arsenal?
Well, in an average year, we'll have 100 million of gate receipts, and that will be across 25 or 26 home games. So that's 4 million a game. 4% of 100 million is 4%. That's one extra home game. So I'm not saying, do well in the FA Cup, get some other games in there, but it's one home game. So that's I'm not going to go category A, B, C. It's an average across the board. So it's one home game.
Perfect. Nigel, thank you.
All right.
I've got lots to cover. So yeah, if you just go to the Q&A, Nigel, and just answer the questions when you can, that'd be great.
Right.
We'll introduce Tim. Can't keep Tim away from these, as most people probably
know. Good evening.
Good evening. So quite a lot to cover, Tim. Should we kind of just crack on? Should we start with the 4%? And do you want to kind of, because it went to the advisory board first, then the fans forum. So it went kind of, you got wind of it and then I did. But do you want to?
Yeah. Well, our statement on this is on the website. I'd urge everyone who's interested to read through that. I'll do a quick summary. You can come back. We felt the price rise was unjustified. Can understand Arsenal's financial position, but also look how, like all clubs, they're roaring back to good health. The broadcast revenues are stronger than ever. The Premier League has signed some new contracts, including a big new American contract next year. On top of what they earn now, the clubs will be earning another 12, 15 million out of broadcast next year. They'll also be earning from ever increasing commercial growth. We have new people coming in like Socios. We don't particularly like that. We might come on to that. But if it's there, isn't it there so that fans aren't hit? Just coming back to a point Nigel said, 4 million will be, about 1% of Arsenal's revenue next year, because they'll have all this extra gate money as well from all the fans coming back, and then hopefully Europe. So it's just 1% for Arsenal, but we felt 4% for fans, 50, 60 pounds for average for every season ticket holder at a time when energy bills are going up, at a time when inflation was going up. We didn't feel it was justified, and we told Arsenal that quite forcefully, and it wasn't the right thing to do. We also felt the way it was kind of sprung on the advisory board and fans forum, we're telling you, you can't tell anyone else, and it's not a consultation, wasn't quite the correct way of doing it. And I think, to be fair to Arsenal, they saw that and they gave us another meeting, and I think next year it might be a bit smoother. I do also want to pick up and praise Arsenal for listening on some points. You, Akil, more than anyone, so credit to you, have been banging on about the importance of concessions for younger fans, people that are out of school and college, but maybe in university or their first low-paid job. the 19 to 21-year-olds, and they're going to get cheaper tickets, and they can move.
I should tell you something about that. I remember I gave a really passionate speech in a fans forum in 2017-18 to Ivan Gazidis, talking about how young people come out of education, just can't afford it. And I thought, yeah, I've done well here. I've got to him. Guess what? He left a week later. Not saying that the two were related. Sorry,
well,
continue.
It got there, and well done. I mean, it was a case of catching up. I think there are only 3 other Premier League clubs that don't have something now. But you know, well done to Arsenal for catching up on that one, because the future of the club is younger fans coming through and staying with them. And there is also, when we had another meeting with them, we did push quite hard, and we got some promises of more being done on ticketing. They're going to remove that. I'm sure everybody gets really annoyed. A season ticket holder buys their own seat for the League Cup, and you pay £1.65 for pressing a button. Well, that £1.65 is being scrapped. They're going to invest more in the ticket exchange, so it's even better and easier to use and transfer. There's a sort of online visual look to it, and they're working on longer term improvements as well. And people will have seen.
It is important to say, Tim, that the exchange and the transfer have improved massively over the last year or two, haven't they? It's become very easy to use. I think we're seeing more and more people using it. So I think that's a credit to the club. They've done well there.
It is better, and they're also going to make it easier to transfer a ticket next year, which in effect someone who's not a member will be able to create like a very membership light account, so the ticket can be transferred. So in effect you'll be able to transfer it to anybody with no hassle, which is really important, because the other thing I want to, and I talked about you banging on about something, if I've been banging on about something, it's empty seats forever, it feels like. And finally, and I want to pay credit to Tom McCann, who's been listening, from next year, Arsenal are going to take the season tickets away from those who don't come. Don't worry if you miss 1 or 2 games, but there are people there, believe it or not, who more than half the games, they just leave their seat empty. But part of doing that, you have to make it easy to transfer, easy to use the exchange, easy to donate it. And those services are being improved. So mixed picture there. Don't think the ticket price rise was right, but can see some good things coming. Just very briefly as well, so long overdue, some stadium investment, better screens, new artwork. I think there'll be a working group on the artwork, so we'll liaise with you as the members on feeding in on that, and maybe look for someone to sit on that for us. And yes, that's the picture there. Would welcome feedback, but want to keep moving so that Akil can get to the other parts of the agenda.
Perfect. Another thing sort of you've been kind of working on is the Socios sort of stuff, the cryptocurrency. Do you want to give a bit of an overview of sort of what our position is and where we are with that?
Yeah, well, we're very concerned at Socios. First of all, we don't think it's appropriate to really sell engagement. You know, engagement should be something that is offered to all fans, and to do it through a cryptocurrency is particularly troubling. Arsenal are repositioning this now. They're talking about a digital token and saying that you don't need to buy the cryptocurrency. But the problem is Socios still push that cryptocurrency at you. My advice to people would be look very, very carefully at the small print. Don't invest anything you can't afford. Take your own independent financial advice if you get involved in this. I think the AST have got 2 messages for Arsenal. We really think that this should be regulated by the government, by the Bank of England, perhaps by the Premier League before it's pushed at supporters. And we think that there needs to be very, very good customer awareness, consumer awareness. And clearly Arsenal weren't quite on that at the beginning, because they got censured by the Advertising Standards Authority, which isn't a particularly good look. So we're going to continue to press for that. We're working with other supporter groups for this broader issue of regulation and good governance. And again, I'd welcome feedback on that another time, or on email, or on our response forms.
Perfect. Just had a question about sort of reds and silvers, and if the annual fee will be increasing. So that is, Chris, that is handled separately to the rise. So that's kind of, we don't know yet. It's kind of TBC, but as soon as we do find out, we'll obviously let you know. Obviously, we always believe things should be frozen. But as soon as we have more information on that, we will kind of let you know. And just, Tim, just a point of clarification on the kind of taking season ticket away from people. I think it's going to be the policy is going to be introduced next season, but then the actual action happens the season after.
That's right, because
yeah.
It's actually meant to be a bit like a carrot and a stick, isn't it? The stick is you'll get it taken away, but the carrot is if you can't come, put it in the exchange, transfer to a friend. Because actually, there's a really serious point underlying all of this. More people in the stadium is better support for the team, but also it's really not right to see Arsenal fans that can't get in and there being empty seats. So it's a very important policy to try and improve.
Absolutely, and the club are listening. So I think that's totally fair, and we're obviously working with them on that. Safe standing. There's obviously a working group for that, and an AST member called Lewis is on it, and he's obviously given us some updates recently. But Tim, do you want to quickly cover that as well?
As I understand it, there are very serious plans now being worked up. I would say it's been looked at thoroughly by the club, and I'm optimistic it will happen. The next stage in the process will be a questionnaire going out to all Arsenal members just to get more views on it and how it might work. So when that goes out, we will have input into that, and we'll probably put some thoughts into a newsletter to everybody. We know it's very popular, but with people, it will be a choice. It doesn't mean you have to stand. It means it will be a choice to stand in designated areas, probably will very much overlap with where people are standing up now, but it will become licensed. But do respond to that survey from Arsenal when it arrives and be positive about it, because they need the feedback to get it right and push on with implementing it. For what I would hope will certainly, I think our expectation is you'd look to have something introduced for the 23-24 season. So, in about 16 months' time.
I did have an email. I sound like Jeremy Corbyn here in PMQs, but I did have an email from an AST member who just talks about, they were a bit worried because they sit in the family enclosure. They just want to make sure their view isn't blocked and stuff like that. And that's what the survey's for, ultimately. The survey will let you have your voice. But obviously, if there is anything that, you can let us know in your views, then do so. But that survey will be key. Fan-led review, Tim, your other baby, should we say? What's the latest in that? What's Tracy Crouch been up to now?
Well, Tracy Crouch was actually at the FT Business Football Conference today, as were many other people. People will see a lot of headlines and reporting on that today. Tracy reported that she is optimistic that the proposals in her report will be introduced in the Queen's speech or shortly afterwards in the form of the government bringing forward a bill for a football regulator, an independent football regulator. The AST, as many of you will know, think this is absolutely crucial for the future of the game, better financial regulation, writing fans into the constitutions of clubs, having golden shares. What we'll do is, I think, is it the 24th of March? We have our next meeting, Aki, and we'll perhaps cover it in a bit more detail then. But look out for the Queen's speech. And if it's not there, then we'll have to ask you all as our members to start going to your MPs and making some noise on it. But just a little bit early to do that at the moment.
Yeah. And if that happens, we will draft some templates and stuff for you, so you can kind of pretty much copy and paste and stuff like that. Good segue on to the AGMs, the Arsenal, that stopped a few years ago. The AST AGM is on the 24th of March. You would have got your proxies and you can all vote online. Please vote by the 22nd, just 2 days before, by 8 p.m. So those votes will be counted. And then we'll kind of, we'll do the formal AGM, and we're just working on a guest, aren't we, Tim, and stuff. So there will be an event element to it afterwards. You won't just have to listen to Glyn Taylor talk about sort of law. Tim, obviously something again today that's been in the news has been this Super League that we a lot of members actually probably joined us around the Super League time, but there's been rumours about it coming back, and 3 particular clubs in Europe are still hanging on. I guess technically, as we know, Arsenal are still members because legally it's very hard to exit, even though we're told they're trying to do that. But what's the latest kind of there?
Well, there's 2 things happening. 3 of the Super League clubs are suing UEFA. In effect, what they're trying to do is bring UEFA down so that they can set up their own Super League without any challenge. That's incredibly damaging to the future of football, because that would in effect end the pyramid idea, end the idea that you qualify on sporting merit and promotion and relegation, and they're trying to fight there. It's very unfortunate that Arsenal are part of that legal case. They say they're not actively involved, but they are still, as you said, they're still legally members of the European Super League. I might be slightly acerbic and say, you know, for all that money they spent on a board member with legal advice, they could have done a bit better in checking what they signed up to. But alongside that, though, what we are expecting to see is UEFA announce its structure for the Champions League from 24. And unfortunately,
on that, isn't there?
Unfortunately, I think that's not going to be great, because they've been bullied by the ECA clubs, and we're probably going to see 10 group stages before Christmas. And then, believe it or not, 24 teams will qualify rather than the 16 at present. And they're introducing another knockout round where the 8 to 24 will play against each other to create an 8 to play against the top 8. It's all about trying to create more football. You might think that players are playing too much anyway, and so on. And then there's also this very damaging proposal out there that you can qualify for the Champions League wherever you come in the Premier League, as long as you've got a good European history. And we've been pushing Arsenal and Tim Lewis quite hard to say that Arsenal don't support that, because they have been saying to us, oh, no, we don't agree in the Super League anymore. We believe in sporting merit. But we can't actually get that statement out of them. And some people might recall that the Premier League tried to get an owners' charter, which signed up to that principle, and Arsenal and some of the other big six haven't signed up to it. So it's slightly troubling, and we're talking to other supporter groups and trying to put some pressure into UEFA to try and hold firm on that. If I can just give you an example of how ridiculous this coefficient idea is, if this season, and I know this might not be very likely, but if this season Spurs came fifth and if Arsenal came fifth and Spurs came eighth, Spurs would go into the Champions League ahead of Arsenal, because they'd be seen to have a better recent European history. But equally, if Arsenal came sixth, but Wolves came fifth, Arsenal would leapfrog Wolves because we'd have the better European history. I mean, it's anathema to everything that English football should be about, which is you qualify based on merit. So it's something that we are trying to work with the FSA and the FSE to stop.
Simple solution: come fourth and you're in anyway. Hope you're listening.
Well, why they can't just do something where you qualify and where you finish?
Yeah.
You know, it seems, 150 years, it hasn't done football any harm to work like that, has it?
Yeah, fair enough. Right, okay, there are a few questions in, Tim, that I think you can answer. There's one from Steve, actually, that you can answer about the donating seats and stuff. But I mean, that is something that's something that's coming. I'm not sure you'll see it in the next 3 months. I think it might be the next 15 months, because it takes a bit more work, but it's on Tom McCann's to-do list, and he's promised it's coming. He's got a massive list. Cool. Tim, thank you for your work today. Sorry, it's been a bit rushed.
No, that's good. Get on to the important stuff.
So much to cover. If members do have questions, please do put them in the Q&A, because Tim's got nothing else to do this evening, let's face it. So please do put them in the Q&A, and Tim will answer them, and along with the other board members. Right, we're going to go on to the main part of the kind of evening, and this is the kind of talk about preventing online abuse. So this has been a topic certainly close to my heart, and this is an event that I've been planning for a long time. It's one that, I'm part of kind of networks and stuff in workplaces, and I do some public speaking on it. Naturally, from a kind of Asian background, I am different to a lot of people. I know that, but that does bring different experiences and stuff like that. But as I've kind of gone on this journey and planning this event and stuff like that, there's been so much I've seen in football around online abuse. You'll remember last year we started a campaign called Blow the Whistle on Online Abuse, and we worked with the FSA and other supporter clubs on just getting fans to report abuse when they see it, not relying on other people to do it, doing it yourself. We've been lobbying social media platforms to do more. There's the online safety bill that's been talked about in Parliament. So there's been lots going on, but what I thought we'll do is we'll get a few people in from Arsenal to sort of discuss what kind of goes on with the club we love and the players we ultimately love. So if I introduce my panel, if they want to kind of sort of switch their cameras on and unmute themselves. I nearly wore the same top as Dan and Rob there, so that would have been a bit embarrassing. So if I go kind of, I think it's to my right, to my left on screen, we've got Dan Tolhurst, who's works for Arsenal in the comms department. You might see him occasionally next to Mikel, and certainly if you've been in the ground recently with the interviews outside, you would have seen Dan sort of walking with players and arranging who's doing Sky and BT and things. We've got Rob, who's also from the comms team, and he's been doing some really, really good work here. And then we've got Jonathan as well, who's the CEO from Signify, and they're working with Arsenal, and they've done some really, really good work in this. So I think what we're going to do is we have got an appearance from Granit Xhaka. It is a pre-record before you sort of think he's going to pop up. But we really wanted to get a player's perspective about abuse. You know, we kind of think of players as somewhere up there and on the field, protected. But I had a really interesting chat with Granit yesterday on this. But before we do that, Jonathan, I know we've got just 2 slides we want to show about the level of abuse players get, and in this couple in particular that we just want to show, because for anyone who's not on social media, they might not know it. Go on, Dan, were you gonna?
Yeah, I was just going to say hi everyone, and just before Jonathan shows a few slides there, just on, and I know Rob will say as well, thanks a lot for inviting us, Akil. It's a real pleasure, and it was really interesting to listen to the first section of the meeting, and yeah, it's a real pleasure and privilege to be here and just have a chat about sort of our kind of normal jobs at Arsenal, really, working with the team and with the players, and just thanks a lot for inviting us along.
No problems, and obviously thank you for giving up your evenings. If you do see any of them having a cheeky beer or anything, they're in their own time, they're giving up their evenings with our families to speak to us, so we really do appreciate it. Jonathan.
Yep.
Those couple of slides just to. Yeah, I'm conscious there'll be members here that potentially aren't on social media and actually, might not know how severe this problem kind of is.
So let's talk about that. And first of all, also thank you for inviting me today. It's really good to be here, and the work that we've been doing with the club is something we're immensely proud of, and we'll talk about that in a bit more detail. But just to set the scene, can you all see a screen right now? Great. So here is a couple of examples of some of the abuse that we've been able to pick up specifically online. In these instances, they're Twitter, but we look across different platforms. And some of you won't be that surprised by what you're about to see, but that doesn't make it okay. In this example, you can see Granit Xhaka, targeted online abuse being directed at him. Perhaps the pattern that's a bit surprising here is you would expect to see maybe the North London derby, that he would receive more abuse in that game as opposed to others. But actually, the Arsenal-Burnley game, and this is going back to 2020 we're talking about here, you can see a massive spike of abuse. And we did that study at the time just to try and understand what it looked like, whether we could detect the trends of abuse that you can see in this picture, the motivation behind it, and the tactics that were being used. And you can see here, Xhaka was sent off in the Burnley game. A lot of you remember that match. And that led to sort of 3 times the abuse that he received even in the North London derby game, which I think Arsenal lost, actually. So, you'd expect a lot to happen at that point. But this showed us that we could detect an awful lot of abuse trends online, and we'll talk in a minute about what can be done about it. But as much as we look at these big trend lines, it's really important to think about what's underneath them. So within that trend, within that spike of abuse that you see there, these are the kinds of messages that are popping up. And apologies, I should give a warning to some people. There may be some younger people on here, but a lot of you have seen this kind of thing. Just overtly racist, death threats, just horrible stuff that, as we're going to hear shortly, affects the players massively.
Do you want to come in there, Jonathan, just to say that obviously this isn't pleasant? We did think about, do we show this, do we not show it? But these are publicly available tweets. So if you were to search, you would be able to find these tweets. So we thought they're in the public domain anyway. Granit and others do have to deal with stuff like this. They do see this. So I thought it was quite important. But do apologise. Obviously, no offence is meant to be caused.
Yeah, and on that note, there'll be a few more in a second, so look away in if you want. But so these are the kinds of issues that we're dealing with, and we wanted to try and understand what we could do about it. We set up a system called Threat Matrix, which we'll talk about in a bit more detail in a second. But within what we saw here, we also looked at covering. This was the North London derby, actually, from December 2020. And you can see here just spikes of abuse being targeted at individual players. The manager, you expect to get a certain level of abuse for a loss, at least. But actually, a lot of what you can see being targeted at Hector Bellerin came pre-game and during the game as well. And a lot of the reason for that was that the club were running a campaign at the time on homophobic abuse, trying to stamp out homophobic abuse. And that led to this particular player receiving a lot of homophobic abuse directly as a result of that, and just being part of trying to do some good. So, these are the kinds of things that we're seeing. I'm going to pause there for a second, and I think we're going to pass over to Rob to talk in a bit more detail about what the club have been doing about this.
No, we are. I mean, just seeing this is just awful, isn't it? It just makes you want to look away. Thanks, John. If I just get you to unshare, this is fine actually. Yeah,
I'll leave this out.
Rob. Yeah. So Rob, I mean, obviously we had last year. There was a lot of campaigns going on. We did our blow the whistle. There was that boycott of social media. There was all sorts of things going. One of our own, Thierry Henry, left social media, and obviously Arsenal started the Stop Online Abuse campaign. So do you just want to tell us a little bit about that and how it started?
Yeah, absolutely. So just firstly, just to echo what Dan and Jonathan said at the top, thanks very much for having us. Obviously, a topic that's really important to us and close to us, and we want to talk about it as much as possible, really, and make people aware of what we are doing. So, yeah, to answer your question, I mean, I think everyone's aware, and we all know that social media is one of the ways that you guys, our supporters, and fans across the world can feel closer to the club and to our players. But the slides that Jonathan's just showed really speak for themselves. And as you just mentioned, Akil, it was actually this time last year we saw Thierry Henry leave social media, saying that he would only return when it's safe. Alex Scott said that she lost herself, to quote her own words, when she was abused online. Obviously, as you've seen, we've had players in our own squad who have been subject to awful abuse. And then we heard Ian Wright as well, commenting that racist abuse online has become normal for black players. And I think when you think about that, that's really what that it's becoming normalised, or some might say it already has become normalised. And I think that's what really make us think and chat to our teams across the club and our players, our diversity advisory group, about what we could do to sort of make a stand, to talk about this, to start conversation, also importantly to protect our players as well. So that's where the campaign came from. And as I said, so the primary objective really is to protect our players and to give them the support they need. So one of the first things we did was to strengthen our internal procedures with the creation of a cross-departmental task force. So this is a team across the club, all different roles, all different departments. And the idea is that they know what their roles are when abuse occurs. They know what to do, not only when it happens, but also so as an ongoing support mechanism to ensure that players are prepared for when it does happen as well. So it's a big group of people who are fully invested in this and all have clear roles and supporting roles for the players. So that covers communications team, so myself and Dan and other members of our team. We have social media experts who offer our players training at all levels. So this is men's, women's, academy players as well. And also then specifically on social stuff. So for example, advice on how to help them protect themselves by blocking abusers and muting offensive words and phrases and things like that. Obviously, we have legal support from our legal department if cases get escalated to that level. We have psychologists who players can speak to confidentially if they want to and talk about how this stuff affects them. So as you can see, it's very wide ranging and it's twofold really. So there's the emotional element, with the support we provide, but also a practical element to make sure they can protect themselves as well. And then, once we launched the campaign, I'd just like to talk about sort of the next steps. And we thought about, so we've launched this campaign, but what can we actually do to address this issue? And the stuff that you've just seen from Jonathan, how do we take meaningful action against these abusers? And obviously, a lot of times when this happens, many cases of online abuse come from anonymous accounts, and it can be difficult to identify and do anything about that. So that's why last summer we started working with Jonathan and his Signify team and their technology, which Jonathan will come on to and talk a bit more about shortly. That helps us identify those who do send abuse, even if that's coming from anonymous accounts as well. So it's a really helpful resource for us. It's not something that we could create ourselves, technology-wise. So it's really a game changer in helping us take meaningful action. And it allows us to escalate cases, whether that's to the police, whether it's to social media platforms themselves. Also, and really importantly, also means we can take action ourselves. So if we identify people from our membership database or season ticket holders, we can actually do something about it. So really important work that we're doing there, and that actually manifested in a 3-year ban for a supporter that we handed down last year, someone who incited violence towards Granit, and in the incident that Jonathan just highlighted, and also sent discriminatory abuse to a Tottenham player as well, all online. So it's really important that we back up what we're doing with real action, and that's one case.
Just to come in there, Rob, so he was an active gold member, a season ticket holder of the club.
Correct, yeah.
Okay, so Arsenal certainly aren't scared of banning season ticket holders if they're found to abuse our players, our opposition players. Yeah,
absolutely. Yeah, I think that's one of the most important things, really. We can have all this technology and all this work that we do, but unless we're actually showing our teeth and actually doing something about it, then that's the most important thing, really. And I get one thing just to add there. So even if we, it's quite rare that we're able to identify people who are season ticket holders and members, but even if we can't do that, but we're still able to pass that information on to the police or to the social media platforms. So we're still able to escalate stuff, even if then it's not directly members involved.
Right, thank you. Jonathan, do you want to sort of just tell us a little bit more about the work you're sort of Signify you've been doing with Arsenal?
Yeah, very happy to. And I'll just got a couple of slides just to sort of show how that works, and to back up Rob in terms of what we've actually been doing with the club, and also break down a little bit of the detail of what we can see and what it looks like as well. So yeah, I agree with everything Rob's just said. It's really about creating a deterrent. That's the ultimate goal here, and it is difficult sometimes to identify a season ticket holder, and it is very difficult for clubs to take action against season ticket holders as well. We fully appreciate that, sometimes that's someone who's been associated with the club for generations and will be for generations. So it's really difficult to do, but we fully applaud the work that Arsenal have been doing, not just with us, but in general on this matter. They don't mess around, they get on with it, and they are not afraid to take action. And we've worked with a number of clubs. That's not always the case. I can assure you. So the system that we've set up it's called Threat Matrix. It's built on AI and machine learning. What it does is it allows us to pick out abuse that's being sent and targeted to players, to officials at the club. We cover not just the men's team, but the women's team, some members of the academy as well, and we spread that net quite wide to cover the majority of the club. The way that it actually works is we're scanning for abuse directed and targeted at a particular player's account, and we look across multiple platforms for that. We've got predominantly most of the abuse that we pick up and that we look for is across Twitter and Instagram at the moment, but we can go wider than that. We then proactively identify some of the accounts that are sending that abuse as well, and that's not foolproof. You can't do it every time. There are some accounts that are set up, burner accounts that are just set up to remain anonymous. But we've got a pretty good track record, and where there is abuse being targeted and you've got accounts that are prolifically sending that over and over again, we will focus on those, and we will try to de-anonymize them if they're anonymous. Very often they're not. Very often they tell you exactly who they are. Some people are actually quite proud of what they're doing, and at the same time proud of their relationship to the club. So in some instances you'll see on a Twitter profile, I sit in row Z in this stand at this club. Great, we know who you are, we know where you're going to be on Saturday afternoon at 3 o'clock. We'll do something about that. But very often that's not the case, and we've got to do a lot of work to identify them. And I should add right at the beginning, the data that we use is all publicly available. So it's only what people are putting out there. We don't break people's privacy settings. We're not Cambridge Analytica. We call ourselves an ethical data science company, and there's good reason for that. So we're really careful about the way that we go about doing that. We use something called OSINT, which is open source intelligence. So that is looking at different profiles across different platforms to identify and piece together elements of a particular account to provide evidence both to the club and, if necessary, to law enforcement, to the CPS, and also to the platforms. As Rob said, in the first instance, we want these posts to come down, we want something to be done, and we also want the account behind those posts to have some kind of sanction against them by the platforms first and foremost. So I think someone's asked on the Q&A, has the club contacted Twitter or Facebook to do something about this? Yes, they have, and we're actually providing a lot more evidence to show that those platforms can do more, and to provide them with more information to do that. So we pass that information first and foremost to the club, and the club will check that if we've identified someone who is affiliated in some way to the club, they will check across the databases, be that season ticket database and members database. If we've identified that they go home and away, we'll provide as much detail as we can on that. And then it's over to the club to take action and go through their sanctions processes, as Rob mentioned earlier, to take that level of action. And as I mentioned, we would report that abuse over to the accounts. We're doing that to the platforms. We're doing that on a monthly basis. And we're doing that at scale. So if I jump to the next slide, you can see the kind of scale that we're talking about here. This is this season so far. So we have covered over 1.8 million tweets. This is just Twitter you're looking at here. 1.8 million tweets that we have analysed looking for abuse. Within that, we flagged 10,687 posts with direct discrimination, targeting one of the squads or one of the players at the squad. And then within that, you break it down again, and we've managed to break down those posts coming from 313 abusive accounts who are sending those posts. And then if you go over to the right-hand side, from those 313, we break that down again, and this is the work that we really get quite stuck into. There's a traffic light system here. The greens are accounts that we've verified. We know the identity of these people. We know who they are. In most cases, we know where they live, the region at least, or location that they're sending their messages from. And obviously, in many cases, there's a club affiliation linked to that as well, because within their profiles, they will give away the fact that they are fans of a particular club. It's not always Arsenal we're talking about here. We're also looking at protecting the club and the players from fans from other clubs who are sending that abuse. And I have to say that the club have got good relationships with a number of other teams dealing with some of those. The amber on the traffic light system, where most people, most of these accounts sit initially, is that there is a high probability that we can identify these accounts. We talk to the club about some of the posts that we find within those amber accounts, and then we make decisions over which ones to focus on, and then run investigations to try and de-anonymize some of those. And the reds, I'm pleased to say, is the smallest category, because we've moved initial reds over to amber at least, or into green. And the reds are, these accounts are really hard to dig into, really hard to identify. Some of them have set up to remain anonymous. We could probably spend a few weeks trying to turn them from a red to a green, but is it worth it? That's a conversation we have with the club around the depending on the gravity of abuse. And then the final slide that I'm going to pop up is a breakdown of some of the issues that we're seeing. So if we start on the right-hand side, actually, this is January. This is a breakdown of the abuse that we picked up in January, broken into different categories. So you've got ableist abuse that's being sent, you've got anti-Semitic abuse that's being sent, and violence. And it breaks down like that. Month to month, it tends to change. This month, we can explain some of these on the basis that with the violence category, there was a lot of stuff being directed at Edu over transfer policy. The anti-Semitic abuse was linked to the fact that there was supposed to be a North London derby, but there wasn't. And that's why that raised its head. Also, Spurs obviously were doing their campaign on the Y word at the same time, which also increased the levels of abuse there. And ableism and also a lot of threats and focus on family structured abuse, as we're going to talk about shortly. Xhaka was getting an awful lot of that. So we break things down to that kind of level. We talk this through the club. We look at the issues. On the left-hand side, there are a couple of hints of things that we've been seeing throughout the whole season. So peaks of performance-related abuse. Someone gets sent off. Someone has a bad game. Not just Arsenal, lots of clubs, lots of sports that we work with. That's where we tend to see that level of abuse coming through. Interestingly, the most constant thing we see, no matter what spikes of abuse we see, is targeting of players in the women's team with sexual, misogynistic, and a lot of homophobic abuse. They get an awful lot of that, but it's very constant. You see some of it almost every single week, every single month. The increase of homophobic abuse, as I mentioned earlier on, looking at the Hector Bellerin example, that has just gone up and up and up across every club we work with, across every sport that we focus on. Homophobic abuse has been a constant problem and it's still on the increase. So it's good to see the club taking some action and doing something about that in terms of the campaigns. Death threats and violence, obviously, I've put these in here because these are really important. When these happen, we're alerting the club immediately. Where we notify the club on a particular case, we may have done so because we noticed that there was a death threat coming from a location that is close to the club or a season ticket holder or someone that could have access to a player. That's where we elevate the whole thing and we talk to Rob and the team to do something more a lot faster. And then I've mentioned the transfer window. That's another sort of peak that we see through the season where fans get frustrated with the club in terms of their dealings in the transfer window as well. So that's I'm going to stop there. But those are the kinds of things that we're doing. It's been a real pleasure working with the club to date. What we're hoping to do is build this up across the season. At the end of the season, hopefully, we'll be able to collate all of this. And what you're seeing here in terms of a breakdown for 1 month, we'll be able to do across the whole season, which gives the club the ability to do more. It gives the club an understanding of what's really going on. And then where we talk about the club taking action in terms of season ticket holders, yes, that is only going to be a handful of cases. And there are a number of cases that are going on at the moment. But, you know, it's empowering the club to do something, to create that deterrent that we've been talking about. So, Akhil, I'll hand back to you, but that's a quick breakdown.
Yeah, Jonathan, that was really great. I think it puts a lot of what we're going to sort of discuss in the next half an hour into context. I mean, one thing we sort of spot, you can stop sharing when you get a chance. Cheers. One of the things we noticed there was a theme. There was a couple of players, obviously, that do seem to get more abuse than others. So yeah, we're going to sort of, I got the chance to sit down with Granit Xhaka yesterday just to ask him about this very topic. So we're just going to kind of play the sort of 15-minute interview here. So you should all be able to see it in a second, and you should be able to. Just wanted to make sure my sound was on. Yeah, which it is. Hi, Granit. Thank you for joining us at the Arsenal Supporters Trust meeting, and it's also a podcast. How are you?
Yeah, good. Everything's good. Thank you.
Yeah, good. I think just before we start on kind of the main topic of online abuse, I think it's important just to ask, how things are going. We've obviously won 3 in a row, including that last minute kind of win at Wolves. What's the feeling in the squad? And I think you saw it in the stands. The fans are absolutely buzzing, and there seems to be a real buzz in the air at the moment.
I think if you win and you win games in a row, of course, everything looks good and everyone is happy. But still, I think and I believe we can still do better, improve in little details to be in the end of the season where we want to be. About the atmosphere against Wolverhampton at home. After 6 years or 6 years I'm now here, against Spurs is always amazing. But I think against Wolverhampton, after 70 minutes, I think was top 3 since I'm here. The atmosphere was fucking unbelievable. It was pushing us until the last moment. And people forget sometimes that the fans are so important for us as well. If we feel them, if we know they're behind us. And it was amazing.
Yeah, absolutely. I think probably Leicester at home, Valentine's Day a few years ago was probably the closest I felt to that. But great. But we're obviously here to talk about things that potentially aren't as positive as things like that. But I think it's something we the more we talk about, the better it is. So obviously I'm talking about online abuse and it's something that keeps happening. You know, we've seen it. We've seen kind of racial abuse, we've seen gender, we've seen kind of all sorts of abuse, you know, that's happened. It, obviously, after the Euros with our own Bakayo, it was real at the forefront. But I mean, just sort of, you know, we all have our views, but as players, what kind of are your overall views on online abuse? Does it affect you? Does it not? Do you even know it happens?
Of course, affect you. We are human beings as well. We are the same like you guys. Of course, you are maybe a little bit more in a focus than the other people. Sometimes if you get message like this, it's hard to take it because you don't understand the people. Because the one thing is, if you see the people face to face, they never will tell you something bad. And this is what makes me upset. I'm in this business since I'm 17, so nearly 13 years. But I have the feeling that the abuse at the moment looks like it's normal. Nobody's doing really something against. B is the best example. What happens with him when he missed the penalty happens to everyone, but now it's like normal. Let's go and smash him, you know. And for me, doesn't help nobody. Not us, not you guys, not the people around, not the club, not the team. And I think this is something where we can a lot improving.
I mean, Granit, you know, as you say, we're all human beings, right? And you obviously work in a very public job. I don't work in a public job, but I make mistakes at work all the time and I don't get abused for them because nobody really knows I'm making them. Has there been times where, you know, maybe you haven't had the best game, which happens, it's natural, where you just think, I know what I'm going to see on social media, and actually you're too scared, you don't even want to open it, and you just... Like, does that happen to you? And how that can't be a nice feeling.
Listen, the position we are now, 2022, you have to be very, very strong in your head mentally. I think if one person in our situation now, like a footballers, like a famous people, are not strong there, it's game over. Because how you say you can't play every game 1 to 10, 8, 9, 10. It's not possible. This is life. Nobody is every time 10, 10, 10, 10. Because maybe you have little problems at home, maybe you don't feel well today, but nobody knows. Maybe you have pain, but you play, you know, small things. But yeah, how I said before, of course, affect you, of course. Scared is maybe the word is too hard, the wrong word. But the most important thing, if you're not ready here, the game's over.
And how do you sort of deal with that? Like, if you've seen a couple of messages because you've opened your social media, does it stay in your mind or can you block it out very quickly? I guess you've got better at it over time, but I mean, sometimes even fans have arguments, and sometimes if somebody says to me, you know, even just you're an idiot to me, it stays with me for a little while, and I think, oh, should I? What? But for you, who gets probably a lot more, and you're in the, how do you deal with that? Do you just block it out, or
for me, if one person say to me, "You're an idiot," this is like a joke for me. You know what I mean? This is nothing. What we get. If you see sometimes my social media, then you start to think a little bit more than only this word, you know. But of course, it stays in your head. It depends where it's in the next game. if you play bad and you lose and you have negative messages, you want to play next day again and play better and do better, so you get better message. But I think you can't stop the people at the moment. Why? I don't know. They're so strong at the moment, but yeah, the best thing is not to read it and have nothing with to criticize me. Everything is good. You can criticize me, but I don't accept the people that don't understand football.
But yeah, I mean that makes sense. And I guess even from a performance level, when you've had criticism and abuse, does it affect your football? Like, do you behave differently on a pitch after you've had abuse, or are you just in that frame that no, the way you play is the way you play, you're going to block it all out?
No, I say always myself. The only one who can stop me is myself. Of course, injury and things like this stop you as well, but nobody can stop me, not the people outside. This is in my head. This is why I'm so strong, and I say that always myself as well. I decide when I leave, nobody else, not the fans, not the people. When I'm not ready, I will leave. As long as I'm ready and I feel good and I feel I can help the team, I will be here. But because of the people, because of the bad message, because of the bad stuff they are doing, speaking and writing, no chance.
And obviously you're one of the sort of senior players in the squad. Do you feel you have a role for some of the younger players? Because obviously some of them are coming through, and I know Bakayo got some sort of abuse and stuff, but there'll be other players who will have bad games and get abused, because that's unfortunately the way the world is. Your role is massive there, isn't it? To help those young players through those times.
Yeah, I mean, I can be a good example for them, of course, because everyone knows what happens with me and the fans 2 years ago. And I don't believe so many players that will be back in the same position how I am now. This is my opinion. So that's why I want to be an example for them in every situation, not only on the pitch, because on the pitch, they know what they have to do. They have the qualities, but the most important is outside the pitch, how you behave, how ready you have to be. Doesn't matter what happens, how the people speaks about you, bad, good. You have always to be ready. And it's a new day, so forget what happened yesterday. Try to do it today better, and yeah, don't listen too much outside what the people, the opinions of the people are telling about us or about you.
And I've noticed that you do post on Instagram sort of lovely pictures of your daughter and stuff like that. I've had a son 4 months ago, so I think it was about the same time. So I kind of understand, the kind of the proudness and the pride of your own children. But is there times where you sort of double check or doubt yourself? You think, should I post this or should I not? Will I just get people just, or do you just think, no, this is my daughter, I'm proud, this is my life, I'm a human being, I'm going to do it?
No. I don't think twice when I post something. I do it because I love it, because of course you have to understand one thing. If you show the people something, you give them something to speak about. Yeah, I'm a happy man, happy guy, want to share something in my life with other people. Some people take it good, some people take it bad, but for me it's not a problem. There are pictures where you never will lose, so that's why I will post it. But if I'm scared to post something, I will close my social media straight away.
And I mean, forgive me for getting deep here, but how hard is it for your family, I guess, because you're strong, right? You've played in front of 60,000 every game. You need to be strong, but your family don't play in front of 60,000. They're normal people, and when they see you getting criticism or abuse, I can only imagine it would be very difficult if I saw my son, brother, dad, whoever it was getting abused. I would struggle with that. How do they deal with it, and what do you kind of say to them?
So I'm lucky because we are only 2 kids, my brother and me. He's a professional footballer as well. We are coming from a football family. So my dad, he played as well. My mom was always in this part of business included, So I think for my parents, for my brother, is something normal. But of course, when your wife comes in your life and everything is totally different for her, but the change from a country, how are the people, and then start the people to speak bad about you. it's not easy for her. It was not easy for her, but yeah, I mean, after years and years and years, she know only one part. She know only this part where my job is, and I think for her it's not always difficult, but she's doing much better than in the beginning, of course.
But that's really sad, though, isn't it? It's really that it's normal. That's
yeah, of
what's
course,
wrong.
it's sad. I mean, but what we can change? You can't change the opinion from the people. You can't change the people who are behind this, the laptops. I don't know where. I told you before. I meet a lot of Arsenal fans on the street when I was outside or something like this. But not one of them told me something bad. And this is what makes me very angry, you know, because I prefer to tell me in the face, you are shit, you are that, than to go behind and write stuff that are bullshit, you know.
So we kind of did a bit of a campaign where we encourage fans that if they see abuse online to report it, because I work in social. I think social media companies can do a lot more. They should be doing a lot more to help to stop this. Because at the end of the day, the social media companies are stronger with you guys on their channels. You know, Thierry Henry leaving social media is not good for Twitter or Instagram. So, but we encourage people to keep
They
reporting.
even don't have iPhones in this time.
Yeah, no, but I mean, now he's left, obviously. But but absolutely. In those days, it was a bit different. But we've been encouraging people to kind of report and stuff like that. We've been telling people to educate when they can. I guess it's a similar message to you. If you have a message here to talk to people that have children, people that have friends, what would you say to them? Like, you know, what kind of impact can they have on other people?
Yeah, this is a very good point. So for me, is you can criticize the man, the girl, the boy who does a job. For example, me now. Criticize me whatever you want, no problem with that. But don't start to include the families, don't start to include the kids. It's not the point. It's not them fault, it's my fault. I'm doing the job. I'm the guy who decided to be in this part of business. And leave the part of family, leave the friends and everyone. Criticize me whatever you want, no problem. I will take it easy. But if you start to speak about the kids, you start to speak about the family, there is a limit.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think just again, anyone listening to this, if you are seeing abuse online to Granit, to other players, don't think somebody else will report it. You report it, you know, report it to
It's the same like
Facebook.
you're telling me you have a little boy, yeah, 4 months ago.
Yeah.
Or you are doing a job and someone speaks about your little one. You go crazy as well.
Of course.
He's 4 months, what he knows.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So leave this stuff. Criticize you. I will tell you, you are bad, you are shit. No, you will take it in a different way. But if I start to say, yeah, your little one, hopefully die tomorrow and stuff like this, come on, man. How you can say that to the kids?
And does that happen to you? People do.
Of course, it happens a lot. I get messages, yeah, I hope your kids are dying tomorrow, and I hope your wife too, and your parents. You know, this bullshit stuff. Guys, please leave the family away, man. This is nothing to do with the family. You tell me, yeah, right, I hope you die tomorrow. No problem. Tell me that, because I'm doing the job. But still, you don't tell someone these words, you know? But tell to me, it's no problem.
They shouldn't even be telling you that. They can say that you had a bad game.
Tell me, no problem. But don't take the kids and the families and stuff like this in the game, because it's not their game, it's my game.
Well, when we show this live in our event, we've actually got a few examples of things people have sent to you. So our members and fans watching this will actually be able to see a few examples. So Granit, I know you have to go. So thank you for your time. I know it's a very passionate subject and stuff like that. I think keep doing your thing. I can't talk on behalf of fans because everyone's got their own opinion, but I'm definitely behind you in the club. Hope we can end the season well, because we are on the right road, I feel.
Absolutely. Thank you very much.
Granit, thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye. Thank you.
Bye-bye. Cheers, Bex. It's quite, I don't know about anyone else here, but that final few minutes for me was really hard. You know, listening to Granit talk about people, you know, I mean, you've had a good game, bad game, whatever. You might have lost the game, you might have done something, you might have got sent off. But in order to then look at your phone and someone wishes your daughter dead, I don't know. It just that really got to me. It really got to me. I mean, Dan, you're obviously closest to the players. You work with them. You talk to them daily. This kind of stuff, it's not just, this isn't Granit just putting on an act. This happens and this affects them, doesn't it? And you know more than anyone.
Yeah, definitely, Akil, and big respect to Granit for spending
Absolutely.
time and good work there, Akil, because anyone that works for the club, huge respect for Granit. He's said that to me and colleagues, and explained his position many times. One thing that I would say, and I know we spoke about it on the podcast just before, was that Granit actually wanted to meet with the individual that we identified. So that was one of Granit's big things, and it came through with your chat with him then, didn't it, Akil? Him saying, look, I just want to, don't criticize my family, criticize me for my performances, but don't have a go at my family. And I think he just wanted to meet with that individual, just have a conversation with them to get an understanding of what is actually, why are you doing this? Why are you coming on to me? I know that Jonathan has got examples of working with other clubs and organizations that, whenever individuals do try to reach out for a meeting, Granit was well up for it. Granit wanted to say, look, bring this guy to the training ground and let's have a conversation. But the guy declined. So, but yeah, big respect to Granit. But one thing I would say is that, as Granit alluded to, is that the players have feelings. We've got in the men's first team 25 individuals. They're all different people. Obviously, they've all got different views to the world. Some of them will be regularly tweeting. Some of them will have PR teams. Some of them don't like social media at all. So it's really trying to sort of gain an understanding of those individuals. But they all do have feelings, and a lot of them do say to us in a really busy week when they've had a lot of criticism on social media that just keep us away from the media for a couple of weeks. But no, I did. Granit really did talk so strongly there, didn't he?
Yeah, I just got to also actually publicly just thank Granit Xhaka for doing that. Also thanks to Rob for arranging it, and Bex as well, Rebecca at Arsenal, and I think Kate Laurent and Mark Gunella supported this as well. So yeah, fair play. Everyone was willing to help, and yeah, Granit was great. And yeah, also Dan, I mean, you talked there about sort of players saying to you, you know what, I don't want to do media this week because I've received stuff like that. Does that happen quite a bit? And it clearly shows that it really does stay with them.
I wouldn't say it happens that regularly, but then, for example, the younger players, we would naturally try to keep them away from the media at certain points, like Bukayo and Emil. Everyone always wants to speak to those guys, and we would obviously have a strategy around that and not put them up too much, even in good times. We would obviously we don't really want to use them too much, because we know that every time that a player probably does talk and there is comments about them on social media. So yeah, but again, it's just everyone's different. Some players naturally don't like to do media. Some players love it. It's just sort of knowing those individuals. But I think the main thing I want to get across to everyone is that these guys, it's an easy argument, isn't it, to say, oh, he's a footballer who plays for Arsenal, he earns X £100,000 a week. There's an individual underneath that shirt. He's not just the number 7 wearing a red top. He's a person with feelings, and I think that's what Granit was trying to express as well. You do have to have hard skin, and you do have to be mentally strong. But there are times when it obviously has to get to people, and it's easy to say don't read your comments on social media, but that's easy to say that, isn't it? But me and you, if we have comments on Facebook, you get a comment or whatever, or someone says something to you, it's difficult to try to sort of put that to one side.
Agreed. I want to invite my colleague Zach on, who's just been sort of looking at the Q&A. I know, Jonathan, you've replied to a few messages and stuff, which is great. But Zach, do you just want to? I know there's a few more technical questions around platforms and stuff, but between sort of Jonathan and also a bit of Rob can kind of come in as well. I'm sure we'll be able to cover it.
Yeah, so we've got quite a lot of questions that have been varied, and as you say, some have been going and answered throughout the process. The first one I want to ask you now is from Faisal. He says, could clubs pressure social media platforms into banning accounts? Could you do that with keywords? And on that whole topic is zero tolerance.
Yeah, I can take that one. So yeah, we do speak to social media platforms a lot. Our social media team lead those conversations. And I think since we did launch our campaign and really got into this, the dialogue has improved, and have shown more of an interest in trying to take action. There obviously is still work to do. There's obviously complexities as well around geography and different laws in different countries, which shouldn't be taken lightly. But I think, to their credit, they are showing interest, and dialogue has improved, but there's clearly still work to do. And then in terms of actually, blocking names and people, that is something that we can do as well, and something that we do if abuse is directed at players. We can take action on that as well, and actually block people from following Arsenal at least. But as I said earlier, any abuse, any evidence that we do get, that gets passed on to the platforms as well. So there is a strong dialogue there already.
Absolutely. And the next question comes from Paul, and I think it's one that's been posed quite a lot. And Paul points out, obviously, if you get a video of highlights or a goal that's been pirated on Twitter, that comes off very, very quickly. And we know that I'll search goals frequently and it will say this video is not available in your geographic location. And Twitter especially are very hot on taking them down because they breach copyright. They're obviously not so hot on taking down abuse and discrimination. Why do you think that is? Are there things stopping that? Is that on Twitter's part a lack of interest? Where does this come from?
Do you want me to get that one?
You go, Jonathan, first.
Happy to. Some of you might not be that surprised to learn that you don't really need to look much further than the Premier League for this one. The Premier League team that deals with online abuse is also the same team that deals with online copyright and video piracy. Actually, they started off with the piracy side of things and then grew it into, let's look for abuse as well. Can we train what we're doing, looking for copyright, to look for abuse? So I think, not focusing purely at the Premier League here, but if you look at the overall issue, I would say it's led by commercial interest, and that's how this stuff has been grown out. That's why what the club's doing here is different and impressive from our perspective, because they are the task force they've set up is focused on dealing with this particular problem, and it's not come out of commercial interest. It's down to protecting the players. I think that's part of the problem. And Zach, the question you've just pointed out also highlights the fact that there is technology out there that can identify these kinds of things. We know this because we're able to identify video, images, emojis, voice notes, as well as text. And we can use AI to look for where there is abuse in any of those things. So the technology is definitely there. The fact that the platforms aren't doing it enough themselves, I think, is more probably about where their focus lies rather than a want to do it. Because as Rob says, there have been good sounds coming from some of the platforms. They are certainly trying, but more can be done.
And that's ultimately really depressing if it is that it's the commercial interest. And obviously it's really interesting what you say, that it was the teams that are doing piracy are looking at this as well, because really you'd think piracy is a legal type matter. And this obviously has legal implications, but is much more of a moral core issue to be looking at, not for the legal sort of researchers to be. But definitely. And the next question is probably one for Dan or Rob. And Dan, you touched on this about protecting players and not protecting players from interviews, but looking out for their interests. And this question comes from Matt, and he's saying, what additional measures or guidance or training do you give to the academy players about social media? Because I imagine now you get players who might be 16, 17. If you make a mistake in an under 18 game, that goes viral on Twitter and suddenly you're thrust into the limelight. That wouldn't have happened even 5 years, 10 years ago.
Yeah, that's a really great question, Zach. And we do have sessions with our younger players. And this has kind of moved from, I've been working at the club for nearly 24 years now, and it's moved from kind of traditional media training. So in the olden days, it would just be a case of, not just be a case of, but it would be a case of, okay, talking to the younger players on what sort of media interviews they should be conducting and making them aware of the media landscape, which basically in those days was TV, radio, and newspapers. But now we still have that. We still have regular sessions, which has obviously had to be curtailed slightly due to the pandemic. But this has now moved into both the traditional media training, but also social media. And so we have colleagues from the media and comms department that would do workshops and sessions with our younger players to do a little bit of housekeeping around their accounts, show them the pitfalls and opportunities in social media, but then just to talk about just general things like, you know, what is your profile pic? Look at your history of your social media, just to sort of give them a real good understanding of, as I say, the pitfalls that they may have if their career continues. Because obviously we've all known the stories of people looking back 10, 15 years into players' such social media accounts, but equally to tell them and make them aware that there is a support network for them if they are at all concerned with comments, or just to have a voice with them, a listening ear with them around any kind of concerns they have around social media, because everyone's, you know, feelings and relationships with social media are different. You know, some younger players won't even have an account, believe it or not, but others will be fully on it. So it's just a case of them gaining an understanding of, you know, we are here and we have got support network for them.
Super. Thank you very much. And I think Akil's gonna. I'll pass back over to Akil now. Who's gonna go to the last question.
There was a question about academy players as well, and how we kind of do stuff with them. But also, I mean, Dan, we talked about this on the podcast, and obviously the podcast isn't released yet. But you know, a young Bukayo Saka coming through the ranks, right? He's obviously a great player, one of our best. We're very proud of him playing for England. But you know, if I'm going to be honest, he's black. That means he is going to get abuse. And Marcus Rashford said it. As soon as he knew, or as soon as they missed the penalties, the three of them, he knew what was happening. He knew exactly what was coming, which I think is unacceptable, but very sad. What kind of work do you do with the likes of Bukayo Saka coming through and other young academy players when you know that, unfortunately, it's wrong, but they are going to get more abuse than others?
Yeah, it's having those honest conversations with the individual people. It's always, because people say individual players, they're people, aren't they? It's having those honest conversation with those young people. And by the way, everyone always asks, "Oh, what the players like?" And Bukayo is everything that you would want him to be. He's honestly such a great boy, and hugely respected by everyone. He's a top lad, and yeah, it's just having those honest conversations, Akil, with them. Because we wouldn't be telling people not to look at their comments. We wouldn't tell people not to have a social media account on any particular platform, but it's just being there for them and making them know that they're for them. And I think it does really help. And not only on the pitch, players like Emil and Bukayo that have come through the academy, but off the pitch as well, because they know there's that support network. And I know I mentioned it to Zach in the previous question. But they know they've got that support network to go back into people that they might have been a coach or psychologist in the academy. So that has really helped players when they're coming through, being part of the family, really. But yeah, I think in a nutshell, it's just knowing the individual players, giving them your time and having a conversation with them.
Ross Dan has asked about how engaged is Mikel Arteta in this whole thing. Obviously, Mikel's got a big job on managing the players on the pitch, but happy players are high-performing players. How engaged is he?
Yeah, Mikel's been great. And my personal contact with him, with the media, has been fantastic. And he just wants the club to be as strong as it can be. For example, when Mikel first joined, he was at Highbury House saying, "Look, I know we're based up at Colney, but we are one club." So as part of that, he wants the academy to have a support network. He always has a listening ear around stuff like this. So yeah, as you say, he's got other things to keep his days busy, but absolutely full support from him.
And Rob, I mean, is there a criteria on this kind of abuse? Does a fan, you know, Jonathan as well can give your views on this, but is there it's a question from John about kind of, you know, what is that? Is it volume of abuse? Is it how severe it is? Is it the ability to identify?
Yeah, absolutely. So we do have sanctions guidance, and it's all available on our website on arsenal.com as well. And to directly answer your question, yes, it does depend on severity and volume. We also take into account if it's a first offence or a second offence as well. So it is a bit of a sliding scale. But what we've actually done in the last year is we've updated our guidance, obviously taking into account, you know, the advancement of social media and technology and the fact a lot of this abuse happens online now. So what were previously just our in-stadium sanction guidance, that's now been updated to include online platforms as well. So obviously beforehand, all this stuff would happen in and around the ground. The majority of it, the vast majority of it now happens online. So we've made sure that we've updated our guidance to include that. So that is all available on arsenal.com, and anyone can read that.
In terms of what's actually being captured, just to add to what Rob's just said, we do look at a number of different categories of abuse, a number of different discriminatory factors that we look for. So we're picking those up quite widely. They are born out of the community guidelines that the platforms provide. So we're picking up what we know first and foremost the platforms will take down. That's almost the lowest hurdle to jump over. The next hurdle above that is the one that Rob's talking about, which is what can the club use to take action against members, season ticket holders, people who they're empowered to take action against. And then the third hurdle, which is the hardest one to climb, is law enforcement, criminal prosecution. Where has on the threshold of criminal prosecution been passed? We look for all of those things in terms of what we're capturing and the evidence that we're gathering just through open source social media.
I guess just to add as well, so our guidance is also aligned to Premier League recommendations as well. So it's across all clubs. It's not just us sort of sticking our finger in the air. It is based on Premier League guidance.
We've only got a few minutes left, and we were meant to finish about a minute ago, but let's just say we're into Fergie time, or we've got a couple 6 minutes on the board. Let's say 5 minutes on the board. Rob, I mean, one for you from Neil about, I think I remember what he's talking about, that the club had to kind of restrict replies to a social media post around a religious holiday recently, which obviously isn't a great thing to do. And I work in social, so this kind of things we have to debate as well. Was there an internal debate about that? Was there, and then was there anything done? Did you look through kind of the replies and report them, or is it just, it's hard with resources, totally appreciate, but kind of, do you remember the example he's talking about?
So I don't actually know the specific example that's been mentioned, but what I can say is for the Brentford game just a couple of weeks ago, we did, so for that game, we did some activations with our Gay Gooners supporters group on LGBT plus initiatives and making them feel welcome and making it clear that homophobic abuse isn't welcome at Arsenal. And what we did there, obviously we knew there was going to be a lot of social media posts going out and some films as well. So we did actually, we've been trialing some updated software where posts can be blocked and hidden as they go. So we have a filter of words and phrases that can be stopped from being seen by the general public on there. And that's something that we're still looking at the data and seeing how that's played out, but it does seem that it's worked to a certain extent at least. I think a lot of people notice that, and it just means that people just don't have to see this stuff, quite frankly.
Yeah. And of course, just to build from Rob, we've obviously got colleagues that are manually monitoring everything that comes into the accounts as well. So the team there are always looking at that as well.
There's been lots of good comments about just this whole event, this whole section. I think people are I'm genuinely surprised at how much work is going on behind the scenes. I think that's a really good thing, and we'll make sure, just anyone watching this, if you found this interesting, we are going to make this section available publicly to non-members as well. So feel free to share it in your circles on social media, friends and families. I think it is a very important topic. Last couple of bits now, more for you, Dan, and Rob actually on this one, but there's a question, it's from someone anonymous who might have just forgot to write their name, but it was on my list. We've talked a lot about the men's team, but what about the women's team? Jonathan mentioned it in his slides a little bit about the abuse isn't necessarily on match days, it's kind of flat and it happens all the time sort of thing. But what kind of support are the women's team given by the club? Happy to let any of you.
Yeah, I mean, in terms of what I've talked about tonight, it's exactly the same. So it's the same stuff. So they get the same task force that we mentioned, the same support from social media, from comms, from legal, from psychologists, the whole suite. So they get that full support absolutely, unequivocally. And I think that's right. And Jonathan can probably talk a bit more about the data, but I guess it is an unfortunate part of the fast development of the professionalization of the sport that this is inevitable. A result of that, the abuse will increase as it becomes more visible. And I think, Jonathan, I'll let you talk about it, but we have seen quite a lot of sexist abuse in particular across our channels, and we treat that in the same way as we did with the men's stuff.
Yeah, that's absolutely right, and it's a very familiar pattern that we've seen, not just across other clubs, but also across other sports. We did some work over the summer looking at the Olympics and looking at athletics, and the female athletes, the amount of abuse that they received was shocking, and how focused and targeted it was as well. Likewise with tennis as well, where you've got female tennis players. It's the same pattern. The men might get more high profile coverage in terms of like the Australian Open, for example, but throughout the whole tournament, the women players are just receiving the same sexist, misogynistic, sexual content being targeted at them. It's horrendous, and they do need that. It's a really good question that was just asked, because I think they do need that support, and I think it's actually something, Rob, we should probably talk more about going forward in terms of an extra layer of support given the focused attention they get. So it's a really good question that's been asked there.
Guys, we kind of got to call it in a second. I mean, we did record a podcast before we went live, which does go into some of these details a bit deeper. So I don't want to replicate all of that. So members watching, anyone watching, if you go onto kind of Apple Podcasts or Spotify or Google, you search Arsenal Supporters Trust, you will be able to see this podcast. Finally, just Dan, I mean, just because we have you here and because you work so closely with the players and stuff like that, let's end on a slightly more upbeat note and stuff. How's it been different? What's the mood with the players? What's the, doing interviews outside instead of inside? Because I've seen that a lot of them love them. I mean, maybe Aubameyang's not the greatest example to talk about, but I remember there was one interview where you couldn't even hear the question because there was people shouting and stuff. It might have been after the derby. But yeah, how's everything going in your world, being close to the players?
Yeah, we said it. I'm more than happy. Let's do this again. Just have a. You might not want me to come on again, but
no, we do absolutely.
Have a chat about the media and just a general kind of chat. More than happy to me and other colleagues to come on and chat about how we deal with the media behind the scenes. How that's changed in recent years. But yeah, you're so right, and I think it was great for the fans, wasn't it? When the interviews taking place outside. Our security weren't too happy with it though, because obviously, and also the broadcasters weren't too happy because, as you say, like some of the interviews, the players couldn't hear the questions. But no, through the pandemic, as you probably all saw, everything went to Zoom. So right in the middle of the kind of lockdown, it was literally just Arsenal media colleagues filming it on a broadcast camera, and everything was through Zoom, which wasn't very enjoyable. And I don't think it did players or head coaches, managers any favors whatsoever, because they're just talking into a screen. But now, as you probably all notice, it's going back, and there's people, journalists in media in the room now. So we've got a press conference with Mikel tomorrow at 1:30 at Colney, and there's going to be about 20 journalists in the room. So that's going to be slightly different, and you can kind of feel the room a bit more, and there's a little bit more, you can get a bit more of Mikel's personality. He can have a sort of bit more of a one-on-one chat.
You prefer that?
There. Yeah, absolutely. He prefers that 100%, because you can follow up, and it's all very rigid on Zoom, isn't it? Because the questions comes in, answer back, and then on to the next person. But yeah, it's really good. The TV demands are a lot on match days, but we've got a really good group of players at the moment, as you guys know. It's a young group. There's a real togetherness in the group, and they're all really willing to do stuff. So. It's in a really good place at the moment. So, young players, willing players. Mikel's been fantastic, as I said. He's really good, and as I say, tomorrow for the media conference, he really is conscientious about. And what I like about Mikel, he uses it as talking to the fans. He sees the media, a press conference tomorrow, as I'm talking to the fans, and he doesn't see it as talking to the media. He almost sees it as an opportunity to talk to all the supporters. So yeah, it's we're in good shape at the moment. But as I said, I know we're up for time, but I'm more than happy in future to let's have a media, because I know people are always really interested in the media.
Yeah,
and
yeah.
How does that work? How does a press conference work? How do post-match interviews work?
Yeah.
How do you choose which players doing all that sort of stuff? So more than, it'd be really, privilege again to come on.
Dan, you're going to get an email from me tomorrow, blocking in a date and time. It won't be at 1:30. I'll let you sort Mikel out first, but after that, we'll definitely I'll get in touch. So I want to thank you guys, for I mean, you've given up your evening, and it's been a good couple of hours. You're not doing this for a penny. You're doing this just out of your love out of your industry and the football club. So on behalf of every single member of the Arsenal Supporters Trust and wider fan base watching this eventually, I'd like to thank you, all three of you. We can't give you a round of applause, but I will. I'm sure everybody else is as well. Jonathan, especially, thank you, Colin, for giving us your insight as well, which I think has been interesting. I think it's worth doing this again in a year just to see how things have progressed and things like that. And Dan and Rob, I'm sure, will kind of be in touch. So on behalf of the AST, actually, one last thing, which I've mentioned, there's a Arsenal Foundation raffle going on, which you would have seen me bang on about on Twitter, but also the AST have been tweeting about it. It's been our newsletters. So we're obviously trying to raise money for the Arsenal Foundation. Lots of great prizes. There's a pair of tickets to sit in a box in a home game this season, subject to availability, but we will try and get you to maybe the Man United game, which could be absolutely huge. Pair of tickets to club level as well, signed shirts, signed football, men's and women's. And there's a couple of Per Mertesacker books as well, which are available. So really want to kind of, I'm going to put the link to the raffle on the chat just before everybody goes. Bear with. I've just seen my colleague.
I just did that.
Have you done it to everyone? Oh, you've done that. Brilliant. Perfect. So the link is on there. As soon as I do stop the event, though, the link will go. So if anyone's watching, we'll leave it up for a minute or two. But please do. It's £2 a ticket. Please do kind of support the great work the foundation do. But apart from that, enjoy, stay safe, enjoy the rest of your evening. Hopefully 3 points on Sunday at Watford. And if so, that's 4 in a row. And we are on the way to 4th, aren't we? Come on, you Gunners. Up the Arsenal. Thank you very much. Take care. Cheers. Just get to hide your cameras, guys. Sorry, should have told you that. Hide your camera, Dad. Just to my panelists, if you want to, there's a link in the chat. If you just want to